We've had numerous requests over the years for an Accu-Slice system to fit the Hammer and Felder line of bandsaws. This video will describe a new Accu-Slice system designed to fit the Hammer Model N4400 bandsaw. This new model of the Accu-Slice system will only fit the Hammer models of bandsaws with a 15mm wide by 6mm deep miter bar slot, and where the distance between the bandsaw blade and the miter bar slot is between 3 and 6 inches. It will not fit the Felder models of bandsaws because on the Felder bandsaws, the distance between the bandsaw blade and the miter bar slot is 9 inches. This exceeds the table size on the Accu-Slice system. On the Hammer bandsaws, this distance between the bandsaw blade and the miter bar slot is around 3.5 inches, which enables the system to be used. Our standard Accu-Slice system is designed for the operation on bandsaws with a 3/4 inch wide by 3/8 inch deep miter bar slot on a bandsaw. These systems use an offset cam to lock the Accu-Slice miter bar into the miter bar slot on a bandsaw. The miter bar slot on the Hammer and Felder bandsaws is 15mm wide by 6mm deep, which is too small to fit our standard Accu-Slice systems or use the offset cam locks. Several of our customers had their miter bar slots on the bandsaw tables remilled to a 3/4 inch wide opening in order to install the Accu-Slice systems. However, not everyone wants to do this modification. Therefore, a new model was required. Since I have a CNC mill in my shop, I'm able to custom design and mill the parts to build this new model of the Accu-Slice system to fit the Hammer Model N4400 bandsaws. 3 parts needed to be redesigned and milled for this system. I machined 2 of the guide bar blocks and also a new iron 15mm wide miter bar for this system. The guide bar blocks join the 12mm guide bars to the new miter bar. These blocks are machined from a 1 inch by 1 inch by 1.5 inch aluminum block using the CNC mill. On one side of this guide bar block, we attach the 12mm guide bars and lock them in place with a set screw. On the top of these blocks, I machined a 15mm wide dado slot for the attachment of the miter bar. The miter bar will then be held in place with a countersink screw. The miter bar for the Accu-Slice system is constructed from an iron bar, which was machined down to the dimensions required to fit the miter bar slot on the bandsaw table. I'm using iron because it's much stronger than the aluminum miter bar that we use in our standard Accu-Slice systems, and we needed this additional strength due to the smaller size of this miter bar. Our standard offset cam locks will not fit into this miter bar, so I elected to drill and countersink 2 holes in a miter bar to enable the Accu-Slice system to be screwed into the miter bar slot on the bandsaw table. This will require drilling and tapping holes into your bandsaw table by the user. This is the prototype version of the new model of the Accu-Slice system for the Hammer Model 4400 bandsaw. I'm still refining the final design and machining the parts to make this system, and it should be available and listed on our website by the end of July of this year. It's 2022. If you need additional details, please visit our website, drop me an email, or give me a call. I've set up my Hammer Model N4400 bandsaw, and now I'm ready to install the new Accu-Slice system that I modified to fit on the miter bar slot on this Hammer bandsaw. As I mentioned before, this miter bar slot is 15mm wide by about 6mm deep. So I have my miter bar, which has been machined, as shown previously, and this will mount in the miter bar slot. And it fits there, quite nicely. Now you notice there's quite a bit of weight on the outside of this table beyond the front edge of the bandsaw table. So I like to put these extensions on the front of the bandsaw table. They serve 2 purposes. Number 1, they give additional support for the table, prevent it from sagging, but also they provide a surface for these mag jig clamps to clamp. So if you want to cut a wider board, you can clamp on these blocks. So the first step is to install these L brackets. And these are, again, iron brackets. They've been machined flush so that the edges are square, and they just mount on the front edge of the bandsaw table, 1 on each side. And they mount by drilling and tapping holes into the table and then screwing them in place. So the way I normally do this is I usually put a board across this, and I showed this in a previous video in which I installed these on a Laguna bandsaw. So this piece is just a piece of scrap MDF, and it gives me a flat surface, so when I mount these, they'll be perfectly flat with the tabletop on the bandsaw table. Just use another clamp. And this just holds everything in place while I drill the holes. Now this table is cast iron, so it drills pretty easily. So now I have this thing lined up. You know, it's flat with my tabletop on the bandsaw table. And there's 4 holes in this block, but I only need to put 2. So I'm going to try and use the 2 outer holes. Just make sure there's no rib or anything in the way of the bandsaw, underneath the bandsaw table. I have a 1/4 inch center punch, which I can use to mark my holes. And I just tap them to mark the position. And I could drill through there, you know, with it in place. But it actually is probably easier to take it off and drill it with the clamp, with the pieces removed. And my 2 marks are there, so it's easy to align it. Now I'm drilling through the cast iron, which drills pretty easy. You can use some WD-40, or this is some Tap Magic they use for doing tapping. And just drill the holes and try and get them straight. And cast iron taps pretty easily. Again, I'm using some Tap Magic, or you can use WD-40. And just make sure it's flat with the top, which it is. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And if your holes are slightly out of a line, you can always either drill the holes in the plate a little bit larger or file them a little bit larger. Like this right now sticks above the table a little bit, so I think I'll file that down a hair just to get it level, and that should take care of that. And that completes those. They're nice and flat now, perfectly level with the top of the table. And now you can see the advantage of these plates when I put my Accu-Slice System on it. I have more support. If I can have this system the whole way extended, and my mag-jig clamps actually clamp to the table. And that's just an advantage if you're slicing wide boards. And but the main reason I put it on is just to support this table so it's not so heavy on the outside edge and tends to flip out. Now the next thing I need to do is drill holes into the table to mount the miter bar on the Accu-Slice system. On our standard Accu-Slice system, we have offset clamps to clamp into the miter bar. But this miter bar slot is only 15 millimeters wide, and it's too narrow to use as offset clamps. So instead of that, I'm actually going to be drilling and tapping holes into the table. And actually this is better because it's more secure than those 1/4 turn offset clamps. So I have it all in my system and centered up, and I need to drill and tap 2 holes. So I'm going to do one at a time. Let me drill 1 hole, and I'll tap it, and I'll mount that, then I'll drill and tap the second hole. And actually I can put the mag-jig clamps on to hold in place while I'm marking everything. So once again, I just use my center marking tool to mark the table. And I can actually start the drill in the hole again accurately. It's probably easier to remove this to tap the hole. And again, trying to get it as square and perpendicular to the tabletop as you can. And just wipe the blade so you don't cut your fingers. I'm going to go and screw the rail in place. And I have to mark my second hole. I'll do something a little bit different here. I'm actually going to use a center drill to better mark the hole. So then I can mount my miter bar into the miter bar slot and screw everything in place. Okay, the system's all set up and it rides smoothly and everything. And I have my 30-inch Accu-Slice 2 carriage on here. I just mounted a board on here, which is a piece of walnut about 34, 35 inches long, about 1.5 inches wide. And we'll cut some strips off it and see how it turns out. Now, this is the first time I've cut a board on this hammer bandsaw. And in setting up, I noticed one thing in particular. It runs very, very quiet. I mean, one thing I liked about the Laguna over the Rikon is the Laguna operates much smoother, less vibration with the Laguna. Well, this far outpaces that system. This is a really smooth system. So let me go ahead and try a board here. This is the first time I've used this bandsaw for a board, and the first thing I noticed when I was cutting it is my blade was not parallel to my miter bar slot. The blade was actually touching the board on this outside edge, so I need to twist the table slightly like that. I hadn't set that up at all before, so let me go ahead and do that adjustment. And that's done. There's 4 bolts on the trunnion plate, and I just have to loosen those bolts. And twist it. And this is trial and error to do this. Okay, the blade is still touching the back edge on this side. There's plenty of gap on this inner surface of the blade, but on this outer surface, this back edge of the blade is just touching the wood, and that'll give you an accurate cut. So I need to twist this some more. After adjusting the trunnion plate on the bandsaw and twisting the table slightly, this is the resulting cut, showing the gap on both sides of the bandsaw blade on the back edge. And when I was setting this up, I had no gap on this side of the blade. I had a gap on this side on the back edge. And what happens if that occurs when the blade is touching the board on the one side of the kerf? What happens is either the board moves or the blade moves, and you get boards that'll be thicker at one end than the other. And then when you push the board back through the bandsaw blade, it binds on the blade because it wasn't cut straight. So it's very important that your blade be parallel to the miter bar slot, and you adjust that by loosening the bolts on the trunnion plate and twisting your table. But it's good now. I have a gap on both sides of the blade, so it's working fine. I just found a new board on here. This is a piece of cherry, about 30 inches long, 1.5 inches thick, or 1.5 inches tall, and about 3/4 inch thick. So let me slice off some sections. I just sliced a section, giving it a nice flat surface. So now let's go ahead and cut this board 50,000 of an inch thick. And that board cut pretty nice. Let me do a couple of quick measurements on it. Measuring the board end to end and top and bottom, I found a variation between 49.5 and 51.5 thousandths of an inch thickness. That's an error of plus or minus 1/1000th of an inch. One of the nice features on this hammer bandsaw is I can change bandsaw blades without taking the Accu-Slice system off the bandsaw, because the blade slides in from the side, whereas on the Laguna bandsaw, the blade slides in from the front. So I actually can leave my Accu-Slice system on the bandsaw. I did take the fence off and the fence rail, just because I never use a fence anymore and it's just in the way, so it's much easier to change the blades without that guide bar for the bandsaw blade. And I'm going to be cutting a wider board. The blade that was on there was a 10 teeth per inch, and I'm changing to an 8 teeth per inch blade. The one thing this bandsaw does lack is a quick release on the bandsaw blade. I like this. I put it on my jet bandsaw when I had it, and it's standard on the Laguna bandsaws, which is a nice feature for quick changing blades. Actually, what's make that system as nice is when you're done running for the day, you can release the tension on the bandsaw blade real quickly. Okay, this next board I'm cutting is a piece of poplar. It's 30 inches long by 6 inches tall. And I'll be cutting a slice off 50,000 of an inch thick. Well, that cut pretty nice. And as I was cutting it, I was looking at the back edge of the blade, and I definitely saw a gap on both sides of the board, so this board should be pretty good. Surface is pretty good. This was cut with an 8 teeth per inch blade. Let's do some measurement to see what kind of variation we get. Measuring this board along both edges at various points, both the top and bottom edges, I found a variation between 44 and 47 thousandths. So that's like 45 thousandths, maybe 1.5 thousandths variation. Pretty good. And nice straight parallel edge to edge, top to bottom. Well, this completes the design, development, and testing of this Accu-Slice system for the Hammer Model N4400 bandsaw. I bought this bandsaw actually for two reasons. I bought it first of all to develop this Accu-Slice system for the Hammer and Felder bandsaw. We've had a lot of requests over the years for a system to fit the Hammer and the Felder bandsaws. The system does fit the Hammer Model N4400 bandsaw, but it will not fit the Felder bandsaws. The Hammer bandsaws, the distance between the miter bar slot and the bandsaw blade is on the Model 4400 is 3.5 inches, but on the Felder bandsaws it's 9 inches. That distance is too big. This table is too small. It will not fit on those bandsaws, but does fit the Hammer line of bandsaws. The second reason I bought this system is to develop an automated Accu-Slice system to fit on this bandsaw. I'm developing an automated Accu-Slice system, and I'm making two models, one for the Hammer 4400 bandsaw, and the other for the standard 3/4 inch wide miter bar slot. The difference between two bandsaws is most bandsaws that are sold in America have a 3/4 inch wide miter bar slot. The hammer and also the Felder bandsaws have a 15 millimeter wide miter bar slot, so it's a different type of setup. And our standard system does not fit these systems. But this new system will fit the hammer bandsaws, and we'll be offering this on our website very shortly. A couple comments on the hammer bandsaw. First of all, it took over 6 months to get it. I ordered this back in November, and it just came in June, so it was quite a long delivery time for the system. The system's about twice the weight of my Laguna bandsaw, and it definitely runs quieter, much more quieter. In fact, one of the reasons I like the Laguna bandsaws over the Rikon is because the Laguna runs much smoother and it's quieter. Well, this system's even quieter. And it gets pretty good cuts. I can't say the cuts are any better than my Laguna, but they're just as good. But it's definitely a quieter machine. I spent quite a while getting the blade guides set up to get them tuned in, but they're all set up now. And I had to adjust the trunnion plate to get the bandsaw blade parallel to the miter bar slot. So those are two changes I made to the system in setting it up. But other than that, it works pretty well. This new Accu-Slice system works quite well in the system. And we're doing some more testing and some more boards in the next few days. So once again, thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, as always, please give us a call or drop us an email. We're always happy to hear from you.